The mainstream media and the left are really panicking right now. They're in self-destruct mode. I'm going to talk about the key indicators and the trends that we're seeing, which will explain all of that. And we're going to talk about why the polls are absolutely wrong. We're going to fill this map in behind me to see how it would look if the election were held today, in my opinion. And we're going to do all this, and we're going to start right now. Hi, my name is Kyle, and welcome to the channel. This is The Conservative Take. If this is your first time here, please consider hitting that like and subscribe button and that bell icon so you don't miss any future content. Hit that join button below if you want to tag along with us and support us as we go forward. We would really appreciate that. Yes, in this video, I'm going to talk to you about that. The Democrats are self-destructing. They are panicking. And how do we know that? Well, one of the key ways we know that is the fact that they are getting into this whole tax thing again. What's up with that? They're getting into this tax thing every 4 years. It's not required for a presidential candidate to do that. Trump's been saying for a long time, I'll release them when they come out of audit, but somehow the New York Times got wind of it, and the Red State talked about this in their particular article here. And by the way, Red State has not always been a Trump-friendly website. In fact, they were far from it. It says here, CNN's Trump taxes hot take aged like a turd in the sun. So I'd be remiss to not talk about this, but they are panicking, and here is a very interesting and key indicator as to why. With the exposure of Trump's tax returns last night, the country was treated to one of the biggest duds of a bombshell, in quotes, in political history. After years of breathless predictions regarding what they would include, we were instead treated to a guy who legally did his taxes. To say that disappointed a media that is otherwise desperately trying to spin this into something it's not is an understatement. So CNN's pretending legally filing taxes is a scandal. All right, so that's that. So it's a nothing burger, but that shows just the desperation that the left has been doing. And so I want to just put that there so we can just say we talked about it. All right, so next thing I'll talk to you about is the fact that there is a thread on Twitter by a guy named Larry Schweikart. He is a #1 New York Times best-selling author, and he had this series of tweets regarding voter fraud and mail-in fraud and all of this. And so I want to talk about this because this is kind of going to lead into the trends that I want to talk about. But in this particular series of tweets, I'll leave this link as well in the description. He talks about, well, 2 reasons why we should not be worried about voter fraud. Number 1 is the fact that they are catching the fraud. Voter fraud by mail is very, very easy to detect. And so here he says here, because we're finding and catching these right and left. I would be very concerned if we were not finding fraudulent ballots, because that would mean they're getting away with it. So we're seeing cases like this where Democrats faced 134 counts of voter fraud in Texas. We saw what happened in Pennsylvania with people dumping ballots in the dumpsters that were voted for Trump. And President Trump in his press conference 2 days ago went through a lineage of all of this, and we're finding these all over the place. So what he's saying is there's not going to be no fraud. There will be some fraud, but it will be mitigated and it will be controllable. It won't be the kind of impact that I think we all are fearful of. So that's one thing. The second thing that he says here is that in just over 30 days, we will have something none of us ever dreamed, a 6-3 conservative Supreme Court. So in a video we did on the Supreme Court, we talked about this. And if you haven't seen it, I'll leave a link again below or above for you to watch that. But to summarize, what I basically said in that, and what a lot of people are saying, is that the Supreme Court, prior to going into the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, it was essentially a 5-4 Supreme Court where Roberts was playing the key swing vote. And a lot of times Judge Roberts, he would tend to go away from Trump whenever Trump wanted something. And so what we're saying was the voter fraud thing was this, that the mail-in voting would happen after the fact on election day. Those votes would be counted at a later date, days, weeks, maybe months. Some people are saying they're going to wait till inauguration so they could have it stalemated and have Nancy Pelosi take over, right, until they can get a final count. All of this. And so I think they were counting on the fact that they would have an advantage to the Supreme Court because Judge Roberts has voted on things like Obamacare that, we don't like. And therefore they would have their way to get into the White House in the event of these ballots not being counted or wherever they want it. You see that they're trying to change Supreme Courts within states to extend the dates to longer dates, whatever, and that was all there. But what he's saying here is that, well, that's no longer there because with Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away, we now have a full 4 court at worst case, right? But we now have Amy Coney Barrett, who's now been nominated, and the Republicans, Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham, very vocally are saying that we're going to get her in prior to the election. And so with that would mean a 6-3 Supreme Court, 5-4 majority either way, and that would prevent the cheating happening with them trying to do mail-in ballots and trying to change state constitutions, Supreme Court decisions, and appeals courts and all that stuff happening. It can be stopped by the Supreme Court, similar to the way it was done in 2000. So he goes on to say something that the Republicans have something called fraud squads that are going out and catching all this stuff. And he said that the more the Democrats vote by mail, the worse off they are because mail-in ballots inherently get tossed just by the nature of what they are. A certain percentage of them just get tossed out because signature verification isn't in, duplication can't be read. You know, maybe you voted more than once on the same thing where you can't vote but one person or one issue, toss the ballot out. And so just by default, they're going to be tossed out. And that is just the nature of it. He goes on to say this, that in North Carolina, the Democrats are actually behind their numbers by 20%, whereas in North Carolina, the Republicans are actually up 2%. Also in Florida, he said that the early voting lead that Democrats normally have has been shrinking rapidly day by day for the Democrats. He also said that if the Democrats don't have a voice by mail or early voting lead by at least 300,000 votes, then they're going to be in some serious trouble. Right now in Florida, they have about 150,000 vote lead. And to put that into perspective, in 2012, the last time the Democrats won Florida, they had a 1 million vote lead in Florida early voting. So that's something to think about. So what Larry is saying is that the Democrats are cannibalizing their election day votes. You're taking the election day votes, the votes that people are going to go to the polls that day. Those are the most secure votes. Those are the ones that get counted that day. Those are the ones that get counted and are certified. The mail-in votes, not so much. Again, many of those are going to get tossed out. And so if you have many Democrats doing the mail-in ballots, then they're going to lose a lot of votes. Not to mention they've locked down churches and schools, and so the polling places are limited. And it's so bad that this article in Axios is saying Democrats mail voting pivot. They're actually saying that Democrats spend the early months of the coronavirus pandemic urging their base to vote absentee. But as threats of the Postal Service delays, Trump litigation, and higher ballot rejection rates become clear, many are pivoting to promote more in-person voting as well, because their scheme is not going to work. But you know what? It's too late. They've already made the elderly population fearful by locking them down, closing schools, closing churches. So now that cat's out of the bag and you just can't get it back. And so the Democrats are really fearful now at this point of what they're going to do. Right now, they are in a seriously desperate place, at least from all the trends that we're seeing. And it's only going to get worse as we go forward with this particular video. So next, we have voter registration trends. And he says here, trends in Florida, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Arizona, New Mexico, and Nevada are through the roof for Republicans. Way beyond most of my optimistic projections. He goes on to say, and we just mentioned this, that Florida may end up on election day with a Democrat lead of under 150,000 early votes. In contrast, like we said before, that in 2012, the last time Democrats won Florida, they had about 1 million early vote lead in Florida. And that's a huge difference. Another key indication is the fact that Trump is surging with Hispanics and Black voters in critical states. This is from American Greatness. Joe Biden has a problem. Actually, he has a few problems. Recent polling shows that Donald Trump is running much stronger with Hispanics and Black voters than he did in 2016. We've talked about this on this channel for months. Those are demographic groups that Biden needs to win big if he has any hope of winning the election. If Trump's strength with these voters continues, it will doom Biden and lead to a second Trump term. In Florida, an NBC Marist poll conducted earlier this month showed Trump with a 50% of the Hispanic vote to Biden's 46%. In 2016, Clinton won 62% of the Hispanic compared to 35% for Trump. Right? And Trump is now outperforming 2016 with Black Floridians. The same poll showed him at 11% compared to 8% in the last election. If those numbers hold, Florida is simply unwinnable for Biden. Polling for other states is a similar story. A poll of 750 likely voters conducted for the Center of American Greatness in Nevada poll's opinion shows Biden leading Trump by just a single percentage point, 49 to 48. As in Florida, Trump is running strong with Hispanics, getting a 47% support to Biden's 49%. For comparison, Trump got 29% of the Hispanic vote in 2016 to Hillary Clinton's 60%. The poll also shows Trump with a 41% of the black vote. For comparison, Trump got 29% of the Hispanic vote in 2016 to Hillary Clinton's 60%. The poll also shows Trump with a 41% of the black vote. 41% of the black vote in Nevada. That is incredible. And here's the poll here. Things are getting exciting in the state of Nevada. And this is something that Rasmussen has also verified. They get the same numbers. Rasmussen poll just reported Biden is leading Trump by just 1 point in the state of Nevada. According to the poll, 40% of the votes went towards Trump and 49% of the votes went towards Biden. Trump is only trailing by 1 point. The last time the state of Nevada turned red was in 2004 when George W. Bush edged out John Kerry. And so these are very interesting deals here. And just to say real quickly, we have talked about this on this channel a bunch, that the Hispanic vote was as high as 50%. We did that. There were 2 polls about that. And that the black vote has been as high as 49% in terms of the approval rating. And this is nothing new. People are looking at this like they're shocked. And I said in one of my videos that Trump would probably get about 11% of the black vote when it's all said and done. 3 percentage points higher is a big deal, especially when you talk about a group of people where the Democrats really rely on 95% of that vote to win key areas. And so losing 3 percentage points is incredibly bad, considering that Trump got higher than what Mitt Romney got. And so they're going backwards in that category, and Hispanics are really going for Trump. And part of it is because the Black Lives Matter deal is something that they just don't sign up for. They have never gone above, I believe, 40% in approval for that. The country as a whole has come down with their approval, or disapproval for that matter, of Black Lives Matter. And the whole thing with immigration and the wall and the fact that they don't want socialism in this country, especially where many of them have come from, especially Cuban Americans, do not want any of that in this country. So they're looking at Trump big time because they don't like what the Democrats are talking about. Simple as that. So I'm sure you heard of the primary model. It's a poll that basically goes out looking at the primaries, and it goes back to 1912 when presidents were required to run in primaries. Well, this poll has been right 25 out of 27 times, and including 2016, where basically had 87% certainty that Trump would beat Hillary. Well, there's a 91% chance now, and it's based on the models of primaries and how the voting came out from that. You can take a look at this for yourself, but it's interesting. It goes on the fact of actual data. And that's very important because people are leaving their houses and going out to vote in a primary. President Trump was unopposed. He was an incumbent, and we have yet to have an incumbent president run unopposed to not win the White House. We've also never had a candidate like Joe Biden place 5th in New Hampshire and also go on to win the White House. Maybe because when you fall in 5th place, no one wants you. There's 4 of the choices that people are going with. So that's one indicator. And also he's trying to run for the 3rd time, and that has never happened as well. So I don't put a lot of stake in that primary model. I do think it's valid, but it just could be just the fact that it's just one of those things where that just works out that way. So right now I'm going to go over the election map like I mentioned earlier in the video. I'm going to go through this map, and the brown sections, I'm going to color those in. And some of the blue sections, I'm going to color those in as well, obviously. And so what I want to do here is, this is the map that right now is based on the consensus data and toss-ups versus likely voters. Everything in blue is going to be Democrat lean or is, and everything that's red is going to be Republican likely or is. And so let's go over this real quickly. And what I'm going to do, most importantly, is go through Trump's easiest path and anything else he can get on top of the 270 that he needs to win. You need 270 electoral votes to win the election. All right, let's get started. So let's go with the easy ones first, okay? The easy ones first are going to be, I would believe, Maine. They split their electoral votes. The 2nd district went for Trump last time. I think it will again. In fact, the whole state might go for Trump this time. but we'll leave this here as a baseline, easiest path. Next easiest one I would say would be Nebraska 2nd District. We'll give that also to Trump. That went for him as well last time. And let's pick Georgia as going for Trump. It's going more blue because of Atlanta and some areas there, but it's going to stay in the red column this time around as well. I'm also going to say Florida. We just mentioned that. That's going to stay red. We mentioned before with the early voting there and the Latino vote and the black vote. All right, let's look at North Carolina. Again, the enrollment of 20% of them being down 20% in terms of Democrats, the early voting and their numbers. That's bad. And Republicans up 2%, a net of 22% there for Republicans. I think Trump will handle North Carolina pretty easily, actually. You have to remember, Mitt Romney beat Obama in North Carolina. And then let's go with Ohio. That should be another safe one for Trump. So right now, he sits at 249, okay? Now, if you remember in other videos, I mentioned that Trump essentially needs 2 of 3 key states. Those 3 states are Arizona, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. Take any of those 3, take 2 of them, in any combination from this point on, and Trump has what he needs to go over 270. So what's the most likely one that he will get? I would have to say at this point, since he's up 1 point in Arizona, the Republican Party is waking up big time in Arizona. I would think that would probably be the easiest one to keep. It's been Republican since George W. Bush. I would say that's probably the easiest one for him to get. That's 260. So he just needs one more of either Wisconsin or Pennsylvania. I think that state is going to be Wisconsin. He won it pretty convincingly in 2016. I think he'll do it again. That will be enough to get him over the top, but I think he'll do better. I think western part of Pennsylvania will carry the state. I think central part of Pennsylvania will get enough other people there as well. And for the reasons we mentioned before about people being locked down, not wanting to get out, election day voting is going to be down for Democrats. And I think Trump will carry Pennsylvania. And I think this would probably be a solid election day map for Trump. But I think it's going to be even worse than that. And so I'm going to leave this map right here. And very easily, Trump could win Minnesota. He could win Michigan. And he could win Nevada. But like I said, he doesn't need these states in this scenario. All he needs is those 3 states before. And he would still do just fine. As you can see here. Of course, the more you have, the better off you are in terms of the cushion because, the electorals can change, they can shift over. Because Trump actually got 306, but he actually ended up getting 304 once it was all tallied because there were a couple people defecting the Electoral College. So it's good to have a little margin above that. But this is where we sit. Trump at 290 and Biden at 216 and anywhere in between. But Trump already has enough to go over the top at this point in time. And so what do you think about all this? What do you think about this electoral map? Do you think it's accurate? Do you think Trump will carry more or less? Do you think that the Democrats are desperate and panicking by doing the narrative of the legally filing for taxes narrative? Oh, what a shocker there, right? And what do you think about the fact that Nevada and Florida and North Carolina and these battleground states are key indicators pointing to Trump? I'd be curious to know what you think. Comment below. I'd be curious to know what you think. And if you like what we do with this channel, where we take culture, TV, movies, and politics, and news and filter it to you the right way, then please hit the like and subscribe button and that bell icon so you don't miss any future content. And if you'd like to support us more, then please click that join button below to find out how you can do that. And as always, please check out some content that we have right here.